One thing that happened today, Senate leaders got a letter signed by the chief executives of about 145 of the nation's best-known companies. The letter went to Senate leaders urging an expansion of background checks to all firearms sales. Just background checks. You can have your murder weapon. Just expand the background checks, please, okay? The 145 company executives, including the leaders of Levi Strauss, Twitter, Uber, say in the letter, which was shared with the New York Times, quote, "Doing nothing about America's gun violence crisis is simply unacceptable, and it is time to stand with the American public on gun safety." Right. Of course. Absolutely. $145 executives. You know who didn't sign? Let me see here. Yeah. Missing from the list are some of America's biggest financial and technology companies, including Apple. They didn't sign it. Facebook. They didn't sign it. Google didn't sign it. J.P. Morgan Chase didn't sign it. Wells Fargo didn't sign it. But the letter represents the latest example of the capitalists, the business community, stepping into this political area, sometimes very hesitantly, very reluctantly, during Trump's destruction of the country. Now, according to what I have here, some of the letter signers plan to lobby lawmakers in Washington, but it's unclear how much money, if any, the companies are going to spend. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, he didn't sign, but he told his colleagues that he agreed with stricter background checks. Zuckerberg said he has decided that activism on this issue would only intensify the spotlight on his company. Others inside Facebook, according to the New York Times, made the case that it was a moral responsibility to press for more responsible gun sales laws. And the leadership of Google, Sergey Brin and that group, whose YouTube unit was the site of a shooting last year, Google recently announced an internal policy that would make it difficult for the company even to consider signing a letter such as this one. The internal policy at Google includes this line, quote, "Our primary responsibility is to do the work we've each been hired to do, not to spend working time on debates about non-work topics." Jesus, God. Several executives had a very concrete worry. They said one of the biggest practical worries was whether these companies taking such a stance would lead to in-store confrontations with angry customers carrying guns. The companies had to consider, would they be putting their employees in danger? Even banks like Citigroup and Bank of America, which both publicly distanced themselves from gun makers this year by ending lending and banking relationships with manufacturers, they declined to sign the letter too. See, after they made their positions public this year, that anybody with an ounce of sense would realize what was going on and make an effort to stop it, even after the banks made that, and I hate banks, even after they made that position this year, they were rebuked by Republican lawmakers. Rebuked, which is a religious term, isn't it? And then Louisiana, of course, passed a law preventing the banks from working on bond offerings for the state. Louisiana said, we will fix you. You're not going to run the bond issues. You're not going to make it. To hell with you. The state's treasurer at the time, John Schroeder, Louisiana state treasurer, said this, quote, I personally believe the policies of these banks are an infringement on the rights of Louisiana citizens. No one can convince me that keeping these two banks in the competitive process is worth giving up our constitutional rights. The letter suggested that background checks, that's what we're talking about here. The letter these executives signed suggested that background checks on all gun sales were, quote, a common sense solution with overwhelming public support, end quote. A number of polls have put backing for these policies above 90%. But oh no! Jesus Christ wants everybody to carry a gun. You didn't know that? Unbelievable, isn't it? What did Bob's letter say? Or the letter from Justin Trudeau? As Canadians, we love our country. Canada is the way it is because Canadians build it this way. None of this happened by accident, and it will not continue without effort. When you take the oath of citizenship, you inherit our proud history and traditions. You are now an important part of this legacy, and you share in the responsibility to uphold the values that make our country so peaceful, caring, and compassionate. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.